This video is part of a series of videos dealing with Jewish life cycle events, and the subject of this video is marriage. So I want to discuss several points in relation to marriage in Judaism. The first point is that if we go back to the Hebrew Bible, there really is no term in the Hebrew Bible for marriage. In the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, the foundation of the rabbinic tradition, the Tractate of Kiddushin deals with matters of marriage, and Kiddushin is a rabbinic term that means, the rabbinic term for marriage. It literally means sanctification, coming from a Hebrew word that means sacred, holy, so that marriage in Judaism is seen as something very, very sacred. And in the beginning of the Tractate of Kiddushin, the Talmud, there's a discussion in which the Talmud distinguishes between biblical and rabbinic language. So the Talmud says that the biblical language is that a man takes a woman. Rabbinic language is that a man sanctifies a woman in marriage. And that's point number one. The second point, I want to discuss reasons for marriage in Judaism. In my view, there are two main reasons for marriage in Judaism. The first reason is of a biological nature, to reproduce and continue the human species in fulfillment of the command to be fruitful and multiply. That's one reason. The second reason for marriage is of a social nature. And marriage is an expression of companionship. And toward the end of chapter 2 of the book of Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve, prior to the creation of the woman, there's a verse in which God says, "It is not good for man to be alone, I will make a helpmate for him." And so that marriage then is an expression of companionship to overcome what I would call existential loneliness. It is characteristic of the human condition that we have a very deep fear as human beings, a very deep fear of being lonely, of being alone. And marriage then is an expression of companionship to overcome such existential loneliness. Now, the companionship of a marriage relationship, in my view, has two aspects. The first aspect is a sexual aspect. And there's a command of the Jewish tradition that the Talmudic rabbis learned on the basis of a verse in the book of Exodus. Book of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 10. On the basis of that verse, the Talmudic rabbis learned a commandment that we call conjugal rights or marital rights. And it's formulated from the point of view of the woman. It means that the woman, among her rights of marriage, marital rights, among her rights is the right to sexual fulfillment. So that notice that sexual relations in Judaism are not seen as in Christianity as a sin. Sexual relations are seen as something, are seen as an integral part of the marriage relationship, such that the woman has a right to sexual fulfillment, and this is apart from bearing children. Even if she's unable to bear children or she's already brought children into the world, she has a right to sexual fulfillment as a part of her marital rights. So that's one aspect of the companionship of a marriage relationship, is the sexual aspect. The second aspect is a social aspect of a non-sexual nature, and to explain the second aspect, I want to go back to the verse toward the end of chapter 2 of the book of Genesis, in which God says, "It's not good for man to be alone, I'll make a helpmate for him." But the verse actually doesn't say that literally. What it literally says is, God says, "I will make a helpmate against him," not for him, against him. So I think widespread among people is a viewpoint. In my mind, this is a complete misconception, but there's a widespread viewpoint among people that argument and disagreement is something bad and to be avoided. Not just in a marriage relationship, in general in relationships, parent-child, friendship, work relationships. Argument, debate is something bad and to be avoided. And in my mind, that's a misconception. And it depends on how we argue. An argument can destroy relationship, can destroy a relationship. An argument can enhance a relationship. It depends upon how we argue. Our argument and disagreement is a reality. Anytime we have two people together, means we have differing viewpoints, differing values. So that argument and disagreement is a reality. The question is how we argue. If an argument is to enhance a relationship, it has to be conducted in a fair way. What we would call in the Jewish tradition, it has to be an argument for the sake of heaven, in Hebrew, l'shem shamayim. And my one general rule, in order for an argument to be for the sake of heaven, to be a fair argument that will enhance a relationship and not destroy a relationship, my one general rule for a fair argument is that we attack the issue and not each other. Not attack each other in a personal way. So it's forbidden to say to me, Jeff, you are a stupid idiot. That's an attack of a personal nature upon my character as a person. And if attacks are of a personal nature, then a relationship will deteriorate. And by the way, I think what we see in the Western world today is, for example, divorce. The rate of divorce is of epidemic proportions. And even where couples don't divorce, the relationships often deteriorate into personal attack and violence, if it's not physical violence, verbal violence. And again, this is not only marriage relationships, it's relationships in general, but I want to focus upon the marriage relationship. And in my view, one of the major reasons why there is such a plague of divorce today, of epidemic proportions of divorce, and even where couples stay together, there are so many problems of, again, if not physical violence, verbal violence in relationships. One of the major reasons is that people do not conduct arguments in an issue-oriented way. The arguments are characterized by personal attack, and then the relationship deteriorates into verbal violence, if not physical violence. So an attack of an issue-oriented nature would be if you were to say to me, not that I'm a stupid idiot, but you were to say to me, Jeff, what you're saying or doing, or what you've said or done is stupid, idiotic. And then you have to explain the reasons why you think so. And then you have to be open to hearing my side, why I think what I've said or done or what I'm saying or doing is not stupid or idiotic. And then there will be an issue-oriented discussion in which we both have to be open to being persuaded. But even if we're not, if neither of us is persuaded and we don't reach mutual agreement, in such an issue-oriented discussion, we will reach mutual understanding, if not mutual agreement. And the mutual understanding will enhance the relationship. Not only that, I think argument and debate is a way of broadening horizons. So there's a remarkable story told in the Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, two great Talmudic rabbis. And the story of their relationship, they were study partners, they studied together, they were famous for the arguments and debates between them. Remember that argument and debate is the traditional method of study in Judaism. Going back to the yeshivot, the study academies that emerged in the Talmudic period and exist to this day, the traditional method of study in the yeshiva, the study academy, is argument, debate, and virtually every issue, whether it's a legal issue or a non-legal, moral, philosophic, spiritual issue, is a matter of argument and debate. There's a plurality of viewpoints. There's the well-known joke, any two Jews together, you have at least three different opinions. That characterizes Judaism. So that, to go back to Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, they were famous for the arguments and debates between them. And when Reish Lakish died, Rabbi Yochanan became very depressed, and he stayed at home. He didn't want to come to the yeshiva to study. And so the other rabbis decided they're going to send a scholar to him to study with him in his home, to get him out of his depression, that'll come back to the yeshiva. So they sent a scholar who had a tremendous knowledge of sources and began to study with Rabbi Yochanan. And every time Rabbi Yochanan would make a point, an argument, the scholar would bring a source, he would cite a source in support of Rabbi Yochanan's view. And finally Rabbi Yochanan became very upset with him. And he said, "What do I need you for?" He said, "I know what I'm saying is right. I don't need your support." He said, "When Reish Lakish was alive, every time I made a point or an argument, Reish Lakish would raise an objection. He would make a counterpoint, a counter-argument. And that way, the Talmud says, Rabbi Yochanan's knowledge was broadened. So that, and to go back to the verse, which God says, I will make a helpmate against him, means that an integral part of the marriage relationship, of the companionship of a marriage relationship, is argument and debate that needs to be, in order for the argument and debate to be for the sake of heaven, an argument that will enhance the relationship, has to be conducted in an issue-oriented way, but that then is an integral part of a marriage relationship in which the husband and wife will contribute to each other through such argument, issue-oriented argument, debate, by broadening each other's horizons. Okay? So that's in terms of reasons for marriage in Judaism. I also want, a third point that I want to discuss is the attitude within Judaism toward marriage and sexual relations, especially in distinction to Christianity. So in classical Christianity, there's a dualism, a duality, a dichotomy between spirit and matter, spiritual and physical, heavenly and earthly, and everything that is heavenly and everything that is spiritual and heavenly is seen as good and sacred, and everything that is bodily, physical, material, earthly, is seen as evil and sinful. So that the ideal then in classical Christianity is an ideal of asceticism, denial of physical material pleasures of this world. The ideal of the monk who lives a life of celibacy, chastity, and poverty. And marriage then is not seen as an ideal in classical Christianity. The ideal is the life of the monk, of a life of celibacy, chastity, and poverty. And marriage then is really a necessary evil or reality in the event that someone cannot reach the ideal of the monk, then the person is permitted to marry. So in Judaism, marriage is an ideal, it's something, again, very sacred. And in Judaism, in contrast to Christianity, Judaism is characterized not by a dualism, but by a unity. God is one, the universe is one. And faithful to the biblical conception, which God is seen as a good God. And if everything in this universe is a creation of a good God, then nothing can be evil or sinful in and of itself. We, as human beings, can use things for evil and sinful purposes. We can do things of an evil and sinful nature. But nothing is evil or sinful in and of itself. So I want to expand upon this, first of all in terms of poverty, and then in terms of sexual relations. But in terms of poverty, I'll connect what I say to the subject of marriage. But in terms of poverty, again, poverty is an ideal in classical Christianity, the life of a monk, celibacy, chastity, and poverty. In Judaism, poverty is something to be overcome. One of the most fundamental ideas of the Jewish tradition, and it has roots in the Bible in the opening account of creation, is the fundamental idea of what we call in Hebrew tikkun olam, repair of the world. So that in the opening account of creation, on the sixth day, when God has finished the creation and looks over all of creation, there's a verse that God says, "Behold, it is very good." God proclaims that the universe is very good. It's not evil and sinful. It's very good. But very good is less than perfect. It's in need of repair. It's a broken world. It's very good. It's not evil and sinful. It's very good, but it's an image of a broken world, a world that needs improvement, that needs fixing. And the human being created in the image of God, is to be a partner in the creation, to improve the world. The human being is the only animal that has the power to transform nature, created in the image of God, the human being. The only animal with the power to transform nature, to take what is God-given, such as wheat, and make it into something even better, bread. So that then, this idea then of repairing the world means that we have a duty not only to overcome hatred, injustice, cruelty, but a duty to improve the quality of life, to use our science and technology to improve the quality of life, to overcome poverty. So the connection to marriage. In this video dealing with marriage, I'm really not focusing on the marriage ceremony, but I'll say two things regarding the marriage ceremony, one of which is connected to the idea of repair of the world. But before that, the first thing that I want to point out in relation to the marriage ceremony. In Christianity, there's an idea that you marry till death do us part. No possibility of divorce. And you marry till death do us part. We do not say such a thing in a traditional Jewish marriage. It's not a part of Judaism. Divorce is seen as a tragedy, but it's a reality that it occurs. And it's an option, that if the relationship doesn't work out, that the couple will divorce. And so in the middle of the ceremony, we stop in the most joyful day in the life of the couple. They're being married, such a joyous occasion. We stop in the middle and we read what is called the ketubah, as a marriage contract that is really obligations of the husband upon the woman should he divorce the woman. This was instituted by the Talmudic rabbis. In the Talmudic period, remember that the woman was very vulnerable. Generally, she didn't have a profession. She wasn't educated. She didn't have a profession. She didn't work outside the home. So that if the husband would divorce her, this ketubah was obligations upon him in the event of divorce. So that really it's an expression of love and caring then, that in the event that they do divorce, the husband is going to take care of the woman. And so this very much reflects Judaism's very pragmatic orientation, that we stop the marriage ceremony in the middle and we talk about what will happen if there is going to be a divorce here. The second thing, which I want to connect to the notion of repair of the world, is toward the end of the marriage ceremony, there's a very beautiful custom, which, in my view, it's a very beautiful custom, that at the end of the marriage ceremony, a glass is put on the ground, and the husband, at that point they're married, the husband toward the end of the ceremony, the husband steps on the glass and breaks the glass, and there's verses from the book of Psalms that are read, the famous verse, if I forget thee, Jerusalem, if I forget you, Jerusalem. And so usually people understand that custom as being, the reason for the custom being to remember Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple in ancient times, in the ancient biblical period. The ancient temple was first destroyed by the Babylonians, and then it was rebuilt, and the second temple was destroyed by the Romans. And so that generally that's the reason given for this custom, is that on this joyous occasion of the marriage, we stop and remember our national history and the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, and we remember Jerusalem. So I want to suggest, the problem with that explanation is it has no connection to marriage. So I want to suggest that on a deeper spiritual level, there's another reason for this custom that is connected to marriage, and that is when the breaking of the glass symbolizes that this is a broken, shattered world a broken world of shattered glass, and that again we have a duty to overcome the hatred, injustice, cruelty in the world, to improve the quality of life. We have a duty to repair the world, to repair the broken glass of the world, so that the husband and wife then are, when the husband is stepping on the glass and breaking the glass, it's symbolizing, in my view, the commitment of the husband and wife to work together toward making this a better world. And by the way, also, Jerusalem, when we read the verses, if I forget the Jerusalem, the root word for shalom, the root letters for shalom, appear in the name Jerusalem. Shalom meaning peace, harmony. And that Jerusalem is a symbol of redemption and peace. So that the couple in breaking the glass and reading the verses from the book of Psalms, if I forget the Jerusalem, it's symbolizing this commitment to make a better world, to help to redeem the world and make this a better world for all of humanity, and that they're going to hopefully bring children into the world and raise children who will contribute to making a better world. And that's what I think the breaking of the glass symbolizes. So that's in terms of poverty, in terms of sexual relations, that in Judaism, nothing is evil or sinful in and of itself. Human nature in Judaism, we actually have two aspects to human nature. We have an animal and a divine side to the human, in Judaism, the human soul. An animal side and a divine side. This is called the evil inclination and the good inclination. The term inclination in Hebrew is yetzer. We have, according to the Jewish tradition, and this has roots in the Bible, a good inclination and an evil inclination. Okay? The evil inclination is the animal side of our nature, of our soul. It's all of the feelings, passions, drives that we have in common with other animals. The divine side of human nature is our reason and conscience. That this is what separates us from all other animals: reason, conscience, the ability to distinguish between true and false, right and wrong, good and bad. And this is the divine side, the human being created in the image of God, the divine part of our soul or of our nature. So this has, again, roots in the Bible. In the second chapter of the book of Genesis, in the story of Adam and Eve, in the creation of animals, in verse 19, chapter 2, verse 19, the word vayetzer is used, from which comes this word yetzer, inclination. And it means they're created, vayetzer. But it's written with one yud, the root letter in Hebrew, that is the Y sound in English. It's written with one letter. Okay? Why? Because animals have only one inclination, the evil inclination, passion and drives. But in the creation of the human being, in chapter 2, verse 7, the same word vayetzer is used in the creation of the human being, and there two yuds are used of the Y sound, two root letters, and meaning that the human being has two inclinations, the good and the evil inclination. Not only passions and drives are animal part of our nature, but reason and conscience that separates us from animals. Okay, so in Judaism then, the evil inclination is not evil in and of itself, because it again comes from a good God. So when, and going back to the opening account of creation, when God looks over all of creation on the sixth day and says, "Behold, it is very good," the Talmudic rabbis learn from that includes the evil inclination. Without an evil inclination, we wouldn't be able to reproduce and continue the human species. And so that the evil inclination is not evil in and of itself. It's only evil relative to the good inclination, so that the ideal in Judaism is self-control, not asceticism as in Christianity, to deny physical, material pleasures of this world. It's an ideal of self-control, self-discipline, in which we control our passions and drives. So that the Talmud says, who is the truly strong person? The one who controls his or her inclination. The passions and drives is intended, the evil inclination. But strikingly, the Talmudic rabbis omit the term evil to indicate, I think very clearly, to indicate that the evil inclination is not evil in and of itself. So who is the truly strong person? The one who controls his or her inclination, omitting the word evil, to make clear that the evil inclination is not evil in an inherent way in and of itself. So the ideal is self-control. Okay? So, and therefore, lust is seen as a terrible sin in Christianity. Lust, sexual relations. In Judaism, lust is a part of the evil inclination, our animal nature, that is not evil in and of itself. It's very good. It comes from a good God. And sexual relations, again, are an integral part of the marriage relationship. So the last thing I want to discuss in terms of this video then on marriage is the marital laws in Judaism. that, or what we call laws of family purity, in which there's a period each month in the marriage relationship, period of not only abstention from sexual relations, but it's a period of separation in which there's no physical contact between husband and wife, no physical contact, and according to the menstrual cycle of a woman. So according to biblical law, it's actually a period of about a week on the basis of the menstrual cycle of a woman, in which there's to be a period of separation. But on the basis of rabbinical law, the time period was expanded, and it's on the basis of rabbinical law, it's about a period of, again, depending on the menstrual cycle of a woman, about 10 to 12 days each month. 10 to 12 days each month, there's a period of separation, not only abstention from sexual relations, but a separation in which there is no physical contact whatsoever. So I want to suggest three reasons for this practice. The first reason is again, ideal in Judaism of self-control, self-discipline, a way of learning to discipline our passions and drives. And this is often true of ritual in general in Judaism. For example, dietary laws. Dietary laws also are a way in Judaism of disciplining our evil inclination, the animal side of our nature, our passions and drives. So there's a Talmudic teaching that if there's a forbidden piece of meat, let's say pork, and tastes really good, we shouldn't say disgusting. We should know that it tastes very good. And yet it's forbidden to us, the Talmud says. The Talmudic teaching says that we should know that it's tasty, but it's forbidden, which means that the dietary laws then are meant to be, among other things, a way of learning to discipline ourselves, to discipline our passions and drives. And so too with regard to the sexual drive. The period of separation here, in which the husband and wife separate each month for a period of 10 to 12 days, is a way of learning to discipline our passions and drives. The second reason that I'll suggest is that during this period of 10 to 12 days when the husband and wife separate from any physical contact, a big problem in a marriage relationship is the relationship can deteriorate to a physical sexual relationship. And here, at least 10 to 12 days each month, the husband and wife are forced to communicate and to relate to each other in non-physical ways, to relate to each other emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, but they're forced to communicate, to relate to each other in non-physical ways. The third, last reason that I'll suggest is there's a Talmudic teaching that is when the husband and wife return to each other, they return as if bride and groom. And notice what's implied here, is that not only, again, that lust is not seen as something sinful as in Christianity, it's something to be reinvigorated. It's something that's to enhance the marriage relations, an integral part of the marriage relationship, lust, the sexual drive, such that we separate, and when they come back, they come back as bride and groom. One of the biggest problems of a marriage relationship, a long-term relationship for people to live together, is sexual boredom. And here we see a very profound understanding among the Talmudic rabbis from a psychological point of view that the sexual drive needs to be reinvigorated. But again, it's not seen as something sinful in Christianity. It's something that's to be reinvigorated and to enhance the marriage. It's an integral part of the marriage relationship and should be something to enhance the relationship. So that's in terms of the attitude then toward sexual relations and marriage in Judaism. With that, I'll conclude this video on marriage in Judaism. Thank you.